Welcome to the Artist Advisory Hotline, the podcast for artists who want valuable guidance and honest answers on how to grow their careers and develop their new project from leading art world experts and artists. Here's your host and founder of the Artist Advisory, Marina Press Granger. Tune in as she gets you the answers you deserve.
Hello, artists. I'm your host, Marina Granger, and today I am here with two of my favorite guys who are the founders of Superfine Art Fair. They have been on our podcast before. If you just go to maybe our first or second episode, I can't remember, but you're literally one of our first guests. So we have James Miille, who is an amazing artist and also one of the co-founders of Superfine Art Fair. Hi, James.
Hi, thanks for having me.
And we've got Alex Mitow, who is also one of the co-founders of Superfine and just an all-around amazing, smart guy and business person. And let me tell you, you are not seeing this, but maybe you're seeing this, I don't know. But you might not be seeing this, but they're wearing like the cutest tropical shirts right now, and it's warming me up in this freezing New York City space. So hi, Alex, good to see you.
Hey, Marina, good to see you too. And you were also our first podcast guest on the Artist Business Plan as well. So.
Good. Yes. Oh my gosh. So this our relationship, this throuple goes back. This throuple really goes back. And I gotta tell you, I remember Alex just like hanging out with you at I think it was like Parkside or something. And you were like, I have this idea for an art fair. I think I'm gonna do it. And this was like literally ages ago. And now here we are. Because at that same meeting that we had, or like hangout sesh, I was like, well, I feel like I should like give advice to artists. And here we are.
Here we are, 10 years later.
Yeah.
But we look the same. We look better, actually, which is amazing. So.
Amazing. Yes. All right. So, you guys, I want you guys to tell our listeners a little bit about how long this fair has been happening and like, how did you get the idea to start this fair?
Well, James pointed out recently that this is our 10th year, which is really cool. Although, if you do the math, it's like 8 or 9, but like it's the 10th calendar year. We started in 2015. It's now 2024, which is really neat to exist in basically a decade worth of years. And we started Superfine because we were both young and somewhat new to the art world. James as an artist, myself as like a curator, sort of like jack of all trades. And we just saw a lot of flaws in the way that art business was being conducted. And like we saw a lot of artists who were hungry for connections and hungry to sell their work and make a living. And then we saw people wanting to buy art, but they didn't know where or how or what kind of space they could be allowed into to buy art. And a lot of like the establishment of art galleries and the art fairs that were making the rounds back then didn't make the kind of collectors that we saw feel comfortable. So we basically saw a way to close that gap where artists could meet their buyers face to face. Took a couple of iterations till we really hit what we do and what we've been doing for the past 8, 9, 10 years. But that was always the idea, was to connect artists with people who want to buy their art.
And that's one thing that I just want to quickly mention to our listeners who might not be super familiar, but Superfine is an art fair that is really beautiful. And what's special about it is that the artist can apply to show their work. They don't need to go there with a gallery. And so in this way, it's groundbreaking, right? There are so many fairs. There's like events out there that you can do as an artist with like a tent in the middle of a parking lot. But this is a whole different vibe because it brings a totally different demographic and air to it. So there's like a lot of artists with MFAs showing there. It's really great. James,
Yeah,
do you have anything to add? Yeah.
Yeah, just to expand on that really quickly, because oftentimes when you hear art fair, you think of one of two things, right? You think of this indoor fair with, tall hardwood exhibition walls, and oftentimes, like you're saying, it's usually galleries that are exhibiting. So artists cannot exhibit themselves in most of those fairs. The other side is more like an art festival, which is like that street fair, which can kind of toe the line between art and craft, like fine art and the craft world. And so a lot of artists who either don't work with a gallery or they're not pursuing that path of working with a gallery, they're then excluded from a professional, like elevated, if you will, opportunity that kind of matches their art. And that's where Superfine comes in. We're kind of that the best of both worlds, where it's indoor, it is professional with the hardwood exhibition walls, and like you said, it also attracts a clientele that is looking to spend more on art. So instead of, a maximum of $200, it's, anywhere from a few $100s to a few $1,000s.
And James, can I ask you, you're an artist and I've seen your booth at Superfine as well. Tell me about your experience showing at a fair like this and just a little bit about your art practice and your art business.
Sure. Yeah, so I'm a photographer. That's, like Alex mentioned, it's a big inspiration to how Superfine started. I was kind of seeing what was working, what wasn't working for me in the art world, and a lot of expectations of what artists are supposed to do. They weren't working for me. It didn't make sense. Now, as far as Superfine, so I've actually pulled back a little bit from exhibiting, so I'll still do like 1 or 2 fairs, Superfine fairs a year. But it's, a lot of the advice that we give artists to be like attending their booth all the time, things like that, I can't quite do because I am also one of the organizers of the fair. But even so, I love exhibiting in Superfine because the people that I have met there who have bought my art, they're long-term collectors. So it's not just someone who, again, like a lot of times from my conversations with artists who have also participated in kind of more the street festivals, someone is buying something more as like a product, like something that they are buying, it's decor for their home, and then they kind of just move on. They're not really someone that you're going to keep in touch with because it wasn't a big enough art investment for them to be, thinking of you as someone they have a relationship with. So Superfine is all about relationships. And so the collectors that I have met at Superfine and the collectors that other artists meet, they are people that are close to you and your art practice. They become part of your art practice as well. So I think that's just the magical thing. And also myself, with Superfine, and then also all the other artists in the fair, you also get to connect with the other artists. I was recently chatting with some exhibitors of ours who had done the fair a few years ago, and even now, like 4 or 5 years later, like they're best friends with some of the people that they met at Superfine. So those connections, both with collectors and other artists, is just like magical.
Mm.
Yeah, and Marina, if I can underscore a couple things that James said, the idea of being able to turn the people, and I might be preempting some of the questions you're going to ask us down the line, but the idea of being able to turn the people that you meet and sell art to into long-term collectors and connections is one of the things that I really believe differentiates and in a sense elevates the experience of working with Superfine versus selling your art through a partner like a gallery or a gallery who's at a fair. Is the difference is your gallery takes your art to Switzerland or whatever, and they sell it, and then you get a check, but you don't get the person, and the person doesn't get you. And they get something you made. Maybe they can go above and beyond to create a connection with you, but you don't get that immediate connection that James is talking about. And I happen to know James's collector list, and many are from Superfine, some are from other art fairs we participated in before Superfine, some are from other similar artist-driven art shows James has participated in. And I would say like 80 to 90% of them are actual friends. Like they're people that, he can stay with when he visits another city, or someone that you can go out for drinks with when you visit a city. I live in Mexico City, and I have friends here who I met as artists that I bought their work here at art shows, and now we're long-term friends. And guess what? I continue to buy their art over time as well. So that's something that you get that's super, super unique to what we do that you don't necessarily get in other spaces where your art might sell, you might get a paycheck, but you do not get the people.
I have
Mm.
one little anecdote related to that. So, you know, I'm an artist, but I also have this like OCD side of my brain with organization. So I have this spreadsheet of like every artwork that I've ever sold. And so like I have each edition of the artwork, and then on each edition that has sold, I'll have like the contact information for the collectors. And I have everyone's information except like these two collectors that bought my work from a gallery. And so it's just like, person bought this. And I'm like, I have no idea who it is. And it just drives me crazy that there's like these two boxes on my spreadsheet that I don't have the person for. But that kind of, you know, goes to the point that we're talking about you don't really get to keep in touch with the collector when it's through a gallery.
Yeah. And you know, I am just wondering so wait a minute. You Alex and James, wait, are you both in Mexico City right now?
We are.
Oh
Different
my God.
Yeah. We're like 5 minutes apart right now.
Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay. All right. So but your art fair, Superfine, happens in the United States. So what cities does it go to? And what is you know, how do we find out? I guess
Yeah.
I'll ask you later, how do we find out when is what? But for
Sure.
now, like for our listeners who are listening now, what's the
Yep.
next fair and
Yep.
where are you going?
I'm going to give you 2024 because it does change from year to year. We've kind of toyed with doing biannual in some of our cities. In 2024, we're going to be in San Francisco in just under a month. So maybe by the time this airs, end of March 2024, it's one of our biggest fairs of the year. It's one of our top markets. After that, we're doing Savannah, Georgia. It'll be our second year in Savannah. It's a smaller show, a very tight show, but we align really closely with SCAD, which is this amazing arts university that really prioritizes this kind of business-minded approach to art that we really believe in as well. So we're doing Savannah for our second year. This will be our fourth year and fifth show in San Francisco. And then we're back to New York. New York is one of our what we would call like a home market. It's obviously where we met. We know each other from New York. We're doing, I can tell you now where we're going to do, and this is brand new, first time drop. We are doing the fair in Times Square, not in like where the ball drops. We're doing it at 42nd and 7th, in a building that's owned by the Durst organization, which is affiliated with Chishama, which is an organization Anita Durst runs that's made for artists. And they've given us a great relationship to enter into one of their spaces. We have a 30,000 square foot space in the heart of New York City. Really, really, really excited about that. So hopefully by the time this airs, this will be the first announcement of that. So we're back in New York in May. We'll do another New York show in September. We have a ton of demand in New York. So we end up doing 2 shows a year there. And then we have Washington, D.C. in the fall. That's another like really, really good market for us. So we'll be back down there. And it's this market people don't often think about for art, but you've got so many educated people who have disposable income, and the market is not saturated there. So it's a really successful market for our artists. So we'll be there. 2025, honestly, we're probably going to add a couple other cities, maybe in the US, maybe out of the US. I just got back from Tokyo. I loved it, and I saw a lot of opportunity there. It's something we've toyed with for many years. There's, some like kind of financial reasons. I think Tokyo is going to actually have an economic boom in the next couple of years. They're raising their interest rates and so on. Mexico City is also having an economic boom. The peso is extremely strong right now. We're going to have an incoming president who I think is going to be a female president, and the first Jewish president of a country over 50 million people or something, Claudia Sheinbaum. So I think there's going to be a really big economic boom here in Mexico. So I'd love to see Mexico and Japan as future markets outside of the US. And so there's a lot of opportunity. A lot of things are happening. We kind of let the demand of our artist audience as well dictate what we do. So we're not going to open a show where we don't have the excitement from artists and also the excitement from the local place of the collectors and the institutions and all the folks there. So 2025 is anyone's game. So you heard it here first.
Wow. Oh my God. Okay. Thank you for that announcement. This sounds amazing. Now, when it comes to Mexico City, we were just talking about this casually, but there is, and it kind of preempts my question of like, has anyone ever been discovered at Superfine? You know, I wonder if it's more than just getting those collectors and building those relationships with collectors only, but have artists been able to get discovered? And we spoke a little bit about an art fair called Salon Acme, which happens in Mexico City. And so I just wanted, yeah, I'll let you take over from here.
Yeah, I'll jump on that and then James can add in a little bit. But basically around the time that we founded Superfine, we came down here for the first time just to visit, and we discovered this other art fair, Salon Acme, and it's very aligned with what we do. It's all independent artists, and there's kind of a curatorial component to it too. A friend of mine, Ana Costela, just was inducted as the new director of the fair this year, and it got incredible reviews. It was a great show. But my kind of point of bringing that up to you previously, Marina, is when I looked at the Venice Biennale this year, I saw artists who are in the Venice Biennale who I originally saw 6 or 8 years ago at Salon Acme. And I know that's not Superfine, but it's a fair that's very similar to what we do. So I do think there's a precedent right now for there's been an overall shift. We came up with this idea 10 years ago. People thought we were crazy. They said, no, it's not going to work. And it ended up being, we've sold millions of dollars in art. We've had, 2,500 artist clients. We've got, we've really put a dent in this. And now you have others cropping up around the country and around the world doing a similar thing. So anyway, I think that the industry shifting and, the industry in general is recognizing artists finding other paths to success. We've had a lot of artists in Superfine who've met developers and institutions and folks who are looking for large municipal commissions and placed work in public settings. That's something that you can really expect from a fair like Superfine, because a lot of these folks are not necessarily bought into the larger, like to the Frieze or the Art Basel level of acquisition, but they still have a really sizable budget and a very prominent place in the world to display the work. So that's something I think you see a lot of via the Superfine channels. We also do work with museums and institutions in every city, and they often acquire work from the fair. So that's something pretty cool that happens.
That is so cool. Okay. Yes, James.
Yes, just to kind of add on to that. So I mentioned before that I've been chatting with a few artists lately who are kind of like our veteran artists who have just been in Superfine for a long time, to kind of see, how they've been experiencing, life and their career after Superfine. And a lot of artists, they have been, either picked up by galleries, like either because of Superfine or right after it. We've had municipal commissions. We also on our on like personally, as we're preparing for the show, we send out direct invitations to people from the art industry to invite to the show and meet the artists there. I think that previously, and part of it might be because this specific model of an art fair that is like more rooted in the fine art world for artists didn't really exist before. And so there was kind of this negative connotation with like, oh, if I'm an artist that's like showing in these like street festivals, then, a gallery is not going to want to work with me. So I need to kind of like keep my art career pristine. Like I need to not be doing anything that's going to interfere with gallery representation. However, now galleries actually go to art fairs to seek out artists that they want to represent. I think that a lot of galleries nowadays they're not so much looking for the gifted but tormented artist that they're taking from the street and turning their career around. They're actually looking for artists who have a significant following on social media. They're looking for artists who are already in charge of their career, oftentimes artists who already have collectors. And the way that you develop a collector list is by showing your work. And so actually nowadays showing in art fairs can be the way that you get picked up by a gallery.
Yeah, and
Oh, go ahead.
I just want to say real quick, and I know that everyone out here is listening to Marina's podcast, so you are already ahead of the game here and you're ahead of the curve. You have to be protective of yourself and your brand, and don't let yourself be like this victim, helpless artist that a gallery swoops up and elevates you. Know what you're bringing to the table. Like James said, they're looking for people who have social media following, engagement, and collectors. So if you're bringing that to the table, know that and use that as a form of negotiation as you build a relationship with them. And that can even shift the way that artists do work with galleries going forward. So that's just my 2 cents, but you're listening to a business podcast, so you're there. So.
That's so beautiful. It's a great transition to what I wanted to say. I actually jotted down, I was like, I have to remember to say this. There are 2 artists that I don't know if I have their permission to say who they are, so I'll just use their first names. There's 2 artists who did Superfine, and I just want to give an example of what happened to them after they did the fair. So one of them is Rachel. And hi, Rachel. I hope you're listening, and congratulations on she just had a solo show open. So here's the thing. Rachel worked with me inside the Artist Academy. She which is my program that helps artists like navigate the art world and figure out how to place themselves in the art world so that it's beneficial for them, and how to present their work and all of these things, right? But I could go on about that forever. But Rachel has an MFA. She did my program. She went and did Superfine. And literally, I know while she was doing Superfine, uh, there was a gallery that was really interested in her. And then a few months later, they gave her a solo show and gave her representation. So this is incredible, right? The fact that they also, I don't want to give too much away, but her doing Superfine was a little bit influential in getting representation in the gallery, right? And then the other artist I think about is Dan. And Dan is an artist I've worked with also inside the Artist Academy. Now, he's a really, really great artist and has been doing it for a long time. But for a long time, he was just like unable. It was just really difficult for him to find collectors. He was showing with one gallery a little bit and selling every now and then. And then he did Superfine, and it was a dopamine hit for me because I kept getting emails from him saying like, I just sold this, I just sold that. And it was so I was just so ecstatic to hear that. And so now he's building his CV even more, showing with more galleries as well. But I think I don't know if he's doing Superfine again, but he's still, he's a free agent, but building his career. And it's just so remarkable because I feel like for both of these artists, one way or the other, just getting out there, showing their work almost like pop the cherry, like it stopped that stagnation. And one thing I want to tell my listeners is, a lot of the time we feel like we're stuck, we're in a rut, we don't know what to do. And I heard this recently and it really resonated with me. When you're stuck, you're in a rut, you don't know what to do. If you actually just do something, if you make a decision, if you do the thing, you can no longer be stuck, right? And it doesn't have to be perfect. A lot of the time, perfectionism holds us back. We don't know what will happen on the other side of anything. So just trust yourself and do the thing, right? So just
Yeah,
had
I mean,
to
that's
say
something.
that.
No, that's great. And that's something like we were talking about before we started recording. It's like when you kind of feel like you're stuck or you don't know what the move is, doing something that's in your control and where you can actually have results. And you mentioned dopamine hit for you, but the dopamine hit for the artist of actually showing up, selling, that's almost worth more than the dollars. Like you can't really quantify an art fair booth by being like, well, I put in 4,000 and I got 12. And it's not that. It's like I came, I showed up, I put my work out there, and I sold 15 pieces. Whether you sold 15 $300 pieces, 15 $3,000 pieces, whatever it may be, 15 $10,000 pieces, you're selling and you're meeting people, and they're trading money that they made doing whatever they do, accounting or whatever, I don't know, for your work, for your art. And that is that dopamine hit that tells you, hey, I'm on the right track. I'm doing something good. And even that alone just is worth it. And I think that it's something that's so in your control. Like, you've got to pass us, you've got to get through our curatorial control. But once you do, and we work with you really closely to make sure that you're showing the right work, that you come in with the right attitude, that you've got the right price points, we do all that with you. You work with people like Marina who help you with that as well. And you come there and you have this successful weekend. And that alone just gets you so much further than just waiting. I watched so many artists wait for the next thing. Like, I'm not going to name names either, but there are some people that I really liked, really liked their work. And especially like when we were down in Miami, and I was like, what are you waiting for? Like, a famous collector bought your work 10 years ago. You're with a gallery that like sells 2 pieces a year. What are you waiting for? You're taking odd jobs while your work is not selling. Like, you got to jump. And so I think that that's what we've seen our artists do, and do really well. So
Totally.
Yeah.
One last thing to mention while we're talking about cherry popping and working towards something. A lot of the I ask artists as they're deciding to participate in Superfine what their goals are, like what they are wanting to get out of the fair. And you have your standard answers, right? Of course, artists are looking to sell art, make new collectors, find gallery representation, things like that, right? The answers that I hear that I'm always pleasantly surprised by. One is that artists want to meet other artists. And that's something that I mentioned earlier that ends up being a big part of it. But related to what we're talking about, a lot of artists say that they want to do Superfine to have something that they're working towards. And artists you will be like just scientifically more prolific with your work as you are getting ready for an exhibition like Superfine. And a lot of times when you feel like you're in that rut, or let's say you have just been kind of like making work, but you don't have a clear direction with it, you've been wanting to create a more solid body of work, maybe something that a gallery will recognize and will enjoy that body of work. Having something like Superfine that you're working towards, you're going to be making like 5 times the work that you normally do. I know that I do. I like, if you were to look at it like a timeline or like a graph of every time I've completed a new artwork, it's like always this like huge spike right before an exhibition. And you know, artists, we procrastinate. We have artwork that we a week before an exhibition,
Yeah.
but you gotta
can I say one more thing? I'll be
Yeah,
super
yeah.
quick. Okay, cool. I wanted to underscore something that we talked about a little earlier, and James is mentioning some of the positive effects artists feel from participating in Superfine or an art fair. Now, I also do film. I produce films, distribute films. I'm on the board of a bunch of film festivals. I do a bunch of film stuff. And when I first started jumping into that a few years ago, I asked a friend of ours, actually a friend of James's who we produced his films for. I said, like, what should my first move be? And he told me, no, get to know your cohort, right? And this is also something MBA students who pay like $1 million for their MBA, they say that the most valuable thing of their MBA is their cohort. It's not the job they get. It's not the internship. It's not the professor. It's not what they learn. You could learn that stuff online for free. It's the cohort. It's the people that you meet and work with that are at your same, doesn't have to be the same age, but your same sort of like level of progress in that industry. And I took that advice with film. I got to know the people in my cohort, and very quickly got to know everybody and got to understand where they were at, their challenges, and forged a business model in that world that I didn't even know existed, because I started to understand people and what they were going through and the successes they had as well. So my point is that when artists do a fair like Superfine, and James mentioned earlier that artists who participated 5 or 6 years ago are now best friends with the other artists. Like that's wonderful for oxytocin and socializing and all that, but really great for your business too, because now you know all these people, and when you thrive, they thrive. When you succeed, you tell them how you did, and they tell you how they did, and they tell you, I worked with this gallery and it really didn't go so well, and you know not to make that same mistake. So no person is an island, and being in this kind of situation, which again, you have control over, you're with other artists who are all working, like James said, working towards goals, and then you can all work together. So I think it's such a huge benefit. Again, beyond the money, it's so valuable to be working with other artists who are not only creating good work, but working towards something.
That is so beautiful. It's true. It's the community around you, right? The cohort you have. So doing the thing to build your community is super important too. I love that. So wanted to ask you guys 2 quick questions. First, next fair San Francisco, is there any spot, as of now, I know we're like recording this
As
end
of
of February. Can
as of
anyone
now,
do
we
it?
have 2 booths left.
Yeah.
We have one of our smallest size and then one of the next size up.
And
Okay, cool.
in New York, we have more. We have probably like 15 or 20 booths left in New York. By the time this comes out, that'll be depleted. But like New York is probably the best bet for anyone listening right now. But we always have San Francisco next March too. So if you want to jumping on early.
Okay, so I know I have artists listening who are thinking this, and I'm like, okay, if they normally sell their work out of their studio for like anywhere between 5 and 15,000, would that be what would you recommend for them? Would it be good for them to do a fair like this, or do you have a different price point?
Marina, I have a couple answers to that. My one question would be, how much work are you selling at that price point? Because if you're selling at $10,000 and you're selling 10 or 20 works a year, you may not really need to do something like this. If you're selling 1 or 2, you might not actually be at your correct price point. You might be like, I face this a lot with people where they're like, oh, I sold a painting for $5,000 or $10,000. So who did you sell it to? Oh, my dad's best friend. Okay, like, is that really your market right now? Are you there yet? And that's not to be cynical, but just it's a
Yeah.
question I would ask. Like, I would ask myself, like, am I really selling at that price point consistently? Now, I would say that my second answer to that is art is a super luxury purchase. It's a super luxury purchase at any price point. And the reason is, as much as we want to live and be around art, I look at Marina's house, it's full of art. I look at my background, it's full of art. James's
I'm
background.
surrounded by luxury.
We are
Super luxury.
we are surrounded by art, right? But at the end of the day, if a person at any economic level has to decide between food and art, they're going to choose food. They're going to choose like children's educations. So art is a luxury purchase. It is hard at any event or fair or exhibition for a person to take out $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 and pay for it right then and there. And we're at a point right now where the middle market is in a really bad situation. Like middle market art fairs are dying. Like this is something I have a lot of inside intel on. They are dying, and the galleries that support them are not doing well. What we do, this like direct to artists, very approachable price points, is doing extremely well, and the extreme luxury end is doing well, the asset class art. My guess is that a lot of people listening are not quite at asset class level yet. So there's a great opportunity here for you to show up. And again, harkening back to something I said before, if you price your work at a range, like I think our sweetest spot is like $500 up to $5,000, with a lot of the work clustered in the $2,000 to $3,000 range. And then having things available, having prints at $100, $200, even having some merchandise available. You should be quantifying by how many people take your work home at any price point, because it takes so much for someone to spend a lot of money on art that they've just seen, they've just met you, they just showed up, but you sell them a print for $100. You sell them a cool original for $1,500. They take it home, they put it on their wall, and guess what they end up with a few years later? They end up with a huge painting that costs $8,000 because they know your work. And that's how James and I bought that artist's work. That's Horacio Quiroz. We bought $100 piece at Salone Acme in 2017, a black and white drawing. I have an $8,000 piece. James and I co-own a $4,000 piece from him. Like he's also a close friend. So knowing that a person is probably not going to be parting with that much money in person, they just met you, like I just would suggest that you put your price points at the price where the art will sell and quantify your results by how many people walked home with something, not how many dollars you got.
I love that.
On that note, so when we are recommending what artists show in Superfine, it is a variety from that low to high. So it's not just the prints, it's not just the pieces in the hundreds or the very low thousands, because a couple of reasons. One, sometimes people do come in and they're like, all right, I am looking for that large piece. Who am I deciding between? And there's not as many $10,000 pieces in the show, and they sell. So if you have that available, you will be catering to that collector that day as well. But on the other side of things, when someone sees that low to high, if they're not planning on spending $5,000-$10,000 that day, but they want to walk home with something, well, they know what you're capable of when you have that large piece. It's the same as when you want a gallery to see everything that you have so that they know the breadth of your work, what you are capable of. Someone falls in love with that $10,000 piece, but they're not planning on spending it that day. Now they're planning to buy that $10,000 piece when they can. And in the meantime, they want to get a print of yours because they love your work. They fell in love with you. They want to keep in touch. They genuinely want to buy that more expensive piece as soon as they're ready.
Yeah.
So
We're giving really good advice right now. I just want to tell them, I mean, we're giving really good advice, and we're giving it in this sort of like a conceptual way, but I'll give you just a very like cheat code answer right now. We could talk more. You can read about like what, our theory behind this, but if you want to succeed at an art fair, let's say you have a 16-foot long booth at Superfine, you have 16 feet of wall to display on. Have one piece available between $7,500 and $12,500, one crowning piece. And it should be horizontal. It should be horizontal because most people, I just, with the exception, I just showed you a vertical piece, but most people are
two giant vertical.
Yeah. Oh my God. We're totally the exception, but 80% of the time people are like, okay, I need a horizontal piece. I need to put it like, that's their big wall. They're like wall over the couch, so to speak, like, or like a big crowning spot in their house. Right. So one piece like 7,500 to 12,500, right? Then have 2 or 3 pieces in the $5,000 range, have 5 or 6 pieces in the $1,000 to $3,000 range, have some cool originals under 1,000, and have prints. If you can manage that, you will have a very successful show. If you can manage that spread, there's a complicated science as to why, but it works. If you can have the prints available, the originals under 1,000, a cluster of originals in the 1,000 to 3,000, a cluster at the 5,000 mark, and that one crowning piece, 7,500 to 12,500, you'll have a very successful show. That's the cheat code. You can tell you all the reasons why, but that's
Codes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it makes all the sense in the world. Because I'm like, I do business, so I understand. But for the sake of time, how can people learn more about, if they're interested in doing Superfine, they want to learn more about you, where can they find you online?
So if you go to www.superfine.world and you just click sell your art in the top navigation, that's going to show you all of our upcoming shows. It'll show you the exact dates, and also it has a lot of information there. And if you would like to express your interest for us to review and consider your work, there's also a form on there, a pre-qualification, so that we can review your work, and then we'll be in touch. And then besides that, Instagram.
And because we love you, Marina, we will also just give you our emails too. So if you want to email us and just say the artist advisory sent you, you can email either myself or James. I'm going to give them to you right now, and I'm sure Marina can put them in the show notes. It's director@superfine.world is myself, James is james@superfine.world. You can just email us, put in the topic line, the artist advisory, tell us that you heard about it on Marina's podcast, and we will take care of you that way as well.
I love that. Thank you so much. I'm sure our listeners feel so special. I know I feel really special around you. And stay tuned, because I have also done these like comfort corners for artists at Superfine, which is like a little booth where you can come and get some comfort. Comforting advice and talks. So we might have some of that in the future as well. Thank you so much, guys, for being here today. And yeah, can't wait to see you again.
Yay. Thank you, Marina. Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for listening. Support your community by sharing this podcast, leaving a review, and follow The Artist Advisory on Instagram at @the_artist_advisory, and visit us online at www.theartistadvisory.com.